Welcome to our second school spotlight. My name is Ann Nielsen. I'm the Associate Director in our Center for Advanced Studies in Global Education in the Teachers College. And I am pleased to have everyone here today. Just as a reminder, I'll give us a few housekeeping tips as we get into the session and give you a quick overview of how the session will go. As a reminder, please turn your cameras on if possible and mute yourselves unless you are talking. If you need to, please update your Zoom names to make sure they're correct. Please note we are recording this session. If you did not sign the photo release form during registration, please keep your camera off and change your name to anonymous. If you wish to submit a question, please send it privately to me through the chat box and I will read it out loud without attributing it to you. The session will be, we will have a magnificent presentation from our Spark at Manitas School. And then following their presentation, we will have time for Q&A, just like you did in the last session. During their presentation, if you'd like to submit questions in the chat box, that would be wonderful. Something might spark your mind as they're speaking and you want to submit that question. And then as soon as the presentation is over, we will engage in a Q&A. And then following that, you will have time for another small breakout session. At this time, I would like to introduce Spark School at Kyrene de las Manitas in the Kyrene School District. Today we have the Superintendent of the Kyrene School District, Ms. Laura Tenyas, Principal at Kyrene de las Manitas, Dr. Sarah Collins, Teacher Executive Designer at Spark School, Mary Brown, and first year teacher, Zoe Glover, here to share with us more about Spark. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Tenyas.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Laura Tenyas, the Superintendent of Kyrene School District. I am pleased to be here with you today to introduce how our school district is implementing a next education workforce model in one of our schools and how we began the process toward a model that empowers teachers and provides deeper, more personalized learning experiences for our students. In 2019, the Kyrene School District launched a new program that reimagines the standard classroom structure by combining innovative practices and learning environments, methods, and staffing in order to keep our commitment to provide engaging, challenging educational environments which promote and inspire a passion for learning, leading, and achieving. This prototype school within a school was developed during a year-long process collaboratively led by the Kyrene School District and ASU's Mary Lou Fulton's Teachers College Design Initiatives. This model is the culmination of 2 years of effort that involved more than 100 Kyrene stakeholders participating in a design process facilitated by ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. Community input and participation has been and continues to be an important part of the process and continues to influence the program's design. All of our efforts led us to the creation of Spark School at Manitas. The Spark School's name, chosen by students in the first year prototype, is an acronym for the design principles it embodies: student-led, project-based, achieving, real-world knowledge. Before you hear from the members of the Spark team today, I would like to share with you one of the whys behind Kyrene's engagement in the process to reimagine teaching and learning. The program model addresses multiple findings and recommendations of a district-wide curriculum audit that led to our creation of our Strategic Plan 2022. The Spark program addresses goal number 1 of our strategic plan, high-performing students. This goal states that Kyrene will prepare all students to achieve their full potential in school and life by providing a dynamic learning environment that maximizes student growth and performance. One of our key strategies to reach this goal was to enhance the district portfolio of competitive options to offer innovative programs that meet the needs and interests of all students, which you will soon hear how Spark does just that. Another component of our strategic plan is our second goal, high quality talent. We are very proud of the staffing model for Spark, which works toward our goal of establishing an effective organizational design with linkage to desired student outcomes and a culture of high performance. You will also hear more about our staffing model from the Spark team. In closing, I want to send a sincere thank you to ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College for their collaboration and support of our Spark teaching and learning model, and for the invitation to spotlight Spark School at this convening today. In Kyrene, we believe that this is just the beginning of our work toward deploying teams of educators in non-traditional ways and engaging students in dynamic learning environments that promote academic excellence. I will now turn it over to our teacher executive designer, Mary Brown, and one of our Spark educators, Zoe Glover.
As Ms. Tenyus mentioned, over the course of a year, Kyrene and ASU facilitated a design team that were tasked with reimagining what teaching and learning would look like. From that work, two goals emerged. One was to address teaching as a profession, where we need to create a solution to the concerns around less people entering the field, less people staying in the field, and where in Arizona we have about 25% of our classrooms without a certified teacher. The second goal is around student learning, where we wanted to create an environment where students were excited about learning and where learning was tailored to them, to their needs, but also to their passions and their interests. In response to these goals, we chose a teaming model for instruction and a commitment to deeper and more personalized learning. We have 5 design principles. They came out of the design work that ASU did with Kyrene. They serve as an anchor and more or less a checks and balances system for us as teachers when we're considering adding or changing anything to our program. These are broad ideas, but allowed for us as educators to define what they look like in practice. So over the last 2 years, we've expanded these to include things like project-based learning, an emphasis on mindfulness and social emotional learning, personalized learning opportunities for all students, a system where autonomy and agency is fostered, and flexible space and groupings of students over multi-grade levels. Our core team is built with experienced teachers, teachers who are newer to the profession, and teacher candidates. This year, we have 1.5 teacher executive designers, 2 certified teachers, and 1 teacher candidate. As a team, we surround our learners. This year, our learners include 115 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. We all own all the kids. Because we have a multi-age environment, we keep our learners for multiple years. The person who leads the team at Spark is called a teacher executive designer. It is a leadership role that was created for this prototype. The teacher executive designer's role is to support the team in creating learning experiences that align with the goals and the principles. In addition to teaching, they also provide coaching and mentorship, as well as acting as the administrator with the students and the families. By creating a staff with varied experience, we are supporting our newer teachers to have some safety nets in place, while also creating opportunities for leadership roles for our experienced and most effective teachers without removing them from the classroom. The selection of the individuals on our team is very important. I would argue one of the most important things. Everyone on the team is committed to the goals and approaches that we use at Spark. They choose to be on our team knowing that it requires a deep level of commitment. All of our teachers believe in the changes that we're making around teaching and learning. They all possess the ability to pivot and to change because flexibility is essential. However, we all bring very different strengths and passions to the table that complement what other teachers on the team bring and help to create a more well-rounded experience for our students. For example, some of our teachers carry the technology piece. They tend to lead our team in finding new ways to incorporate technology in innovative ways. Other teachers have a deep understanding of the backward planning process and project-based learning. We have members of our team who manage the coordinating of bringing expert connectors into the classroom, and those who are responsible for the heavy pieces of communication with families. We also have selected teachers who feel very passionate about teaching a particular subject. Given that we teach multi-age students, there are a lot of standards that we need to know. Having teachers deeply focus on 1 or 2 content areas gives them the time and the space to understand the progression of those standards over time and has offered us more confidence as teachers in pushing kids beyond the standard because of that deep knowledge. Our staffing model also allows for us to hire some additional staff like instructional assistants while also reaching out to our community to pull in expert connectors to bring their knowledge and expertise into the classroom based on whatever unit we are studying or the tasks that students are working on. In the past, this has looked like engineers, attorneys, artists, scientists, a meditation coach. Lots of people have come into our space. It has been amazing working with a whole team, the emotional support that's provided, the relationships that are developed, and the trust and confidence that we have in each other is something I really didn't think I would experience in education. In thinking about how we address our second goal around student engagement, we have chosen a more hands-on approach that's student-centered. We use inquiry and project-based learning as a framework. Over the course of a quarter, our students deeply explore a large topic, something that is connected both to the standards that are required, but also to their world. We explore that topic over all content areas, addressing and teaching standards through exploration and curiosity. In ELA, students read an anchor text that ties back to the topic. In science and social studies, they explore informational text and conduct research. They use that research in writing to complete writing tasks with the various writing types. In math, they're completing sequential lessons that build necessary skills for their level. Over the course of those 9 weeks, we're taking all the content learning and building some sort of a solution that ties back to that real world problem. These projects and solutions are ways for our students to demonstrate their learning in meaningful ways and allow us to assess learning beyond a paper-based test. Students have chosen things like the production of podcast episodes, PSA videos, presentations, building of websites, things like that.
For example, during one quarter last year, our students worked around the driving question, what is the human impact on the environment and animals, and how can we bring both awareness and solutions to the public? Students read an anchor text, The One and Only Ivan, which became a beloved story for them. This novel built a level of empathy around the topic while students worked on literature standards. They used articles and informational text from Newsella at their level to research any animal they wanted to explore that was labeled endangered. The knowledge first developed into a 5-paragraph essay, then translated into an opinion piece on what should be done to protect the animal. They were guided by policy writers to get their opinion piece into the format of a bill, and they later presented them orally in front of one of Arizona state senators, Sean Bowie, who signed off on them. Students took the math skills they had been learning and developed a website that included a blueprint for an animal sanctuary, based on certain criteria while also following a clear budget. During this activity, students consulted with the construction engineer to make sure that they were on the right track. At some point in the quarter, a few students' curiosity around organizations such as SeaWorld spread, and they asked to learn more about them. This interest took the learning in a slightly different direction than what we had planned for as teachers. The different opinions on whether these organizations were more helpful or harmful got the kids debating. We offered them the opportunity to participate in a mock trial if they were committed to do the prep work that it would take. Students had access to a real attorney who donated his time, answered questions, and guided them when needed. This one activity, which was 100% student-led, allowed for kids to practice some incredible skills: research, developing an informed opinion, collaborating with their team, arguing respectfully, and when disappointed, handling it with grace and reflection. We had students who left the mock trial experience saying, I am going to be an attorney one day. What we have found from this type of learning is that kids are deeply invested in exploring topics. They are eager to gain more knowledge, and everything feels purposeful when they are creating solutions.
Our learning studio is open and flexible. Content learning is happening in various parts of the space. Students do have a place to be based on their own individual schedule. We aim to get kids learning and interacting with as many students as possible, so we do not teach in grade level cohorts, but differentiate the learning during the sessions to meet the needs of all of the kids who are in front of us. There are some times during the day when students will move more based on need or interest, like mindfulness and Genius Hour. One unique aspect of our learning is the 25-minute block of time that is dedicated to mindfulness in the afternoon. We give students options of what that looks like for them. Meditation, yoga, silent reading, journaling, maybe drawing, where all mindfulness options are facilitated by an adult, either a teacher or an expert connector. In the beginning of the year, students were selecting all different mindfulness choices and dabbling, but by about November, we found that kids had mostly found their thing and consistently selected that option. Furthermore, we were seeing that kids were using those skills gained during mindfulness throughout the other parts of the day when they might need a reset or a moment to decompress, which ultimately was our goal. It is important to us as teachers carrying out such an incredible vision to make sure that we're always on the right track and that the approaches that we have selected are moving us toward the goals that were set. We have a team of people, both at ASU and within the district, who are regularly observing, conducting interviews and surveys, and parent focus groups to provide feedback for us throughout the year. Just like we expect from our students, we want to be responsive to that feedback. We are modifying and iterating to be better in real time. We do not wait till the next year or the next quarter if we know a better way.
Before passing it off to Dr. Collins, our school principal, who will share about expansion, I feel compelled to share how Spark has impacted my teaching journey. I have had the amazing opportunity to be in Spark for the last 2 years. I started my journey in education as a student teacher in the Spark program with the original piloting team of teachers last year. This year, I'm a first-year teacher and acting as the ELA teacher on our team. In terms of teacher education, there are an abundance of reasons why learning to teach in Spark sets you up to be a stronger teacher. The flexibility of the space and the model gives student teachers the opportunity to lead groups with students on a smaller scale before working with them on a larger scale. Additionally, with the teaming model, student teachers have support from 3 amazing teachers and are able to get on-the-spot feedback on their teaching practices. By designing curriculum to meet the needs of the students that are directly in front of you in the classroom, both new and student teachers are getting the opportunity to learn how to design learning and backwards plan in order to create a more equitable classroom. After reflecting on my growth over the last year and a half, I've decided to conduct my master's research on the level of support student teachers are receiving in their placement and how that impacts their confidence as a new teacher. I have seen a tremendous amount of growth both in myself and the other new teachers because of the support that we've gotten in the Spark program. In reflecting on this goal around creating new pathways and having innovative staffing structures, I personally can see a long career for me in Spark, where I have opportunities for leadership, personal and professional growth, mentoring, and coaching.
Thank you, Zoe. Good morning. I'm the principal of Kyrene de las Manitas, which I am proud to say includes Spark School at Manitas. Mary and Zoe have shared with you how the team has worked toward the program goals and how they utilize the design principles that they shared with you in their work. Their new way of teaching and learning and doing school has greatly impacted students and the teachers in the program. If you heard Mary's keynote from yesterday, you've heard from some of our families in a video that she shared about how they're responding to this style of learning for their children. And at the beginning of this school year, Mary and the team began getting questions from parents about how their 5th graders could continue on in a 6th grade Spark model instead of heading to one of our Kyrene middle schools, because in Kyrene we're a K-5 elementary and a 6-8 middle school. So we surveyed our 5th grade parents to see if there was widespread interest or just an isolated request for expansion to 6th grade. And 95% of the 74 families who responded to the survey about a middle school option said yes, they want to see Kyrene offer a 6-8 model like Spark for their child. The other 5% said that they were unsure, but not one respondent said they wanted a traditional middle school environment for their child. So the results were loud and clear that we not only needed to think about expansion on our campus to our other grade levels, but expanding pre-K through 5 also into 6th grade for our learners and their families. We are fortunate that our governing board has approved the expansion of Spark at Manitas to all 3rd through 5th graders and to our 6th graders who want to stay with us for the 21-22 school year. Our kindergarten through 2nd grade teams will be dabbling in the design principles next year, although not officially part of the Spark model. And we have some long-term goals, including our kindergarten through 2nd grade learners in the 22-23 school year being wrapped into the program, and then working towards a signature preschool Spark program and eventually implementing the Spark model school-wide as a pre-K through 8th grade campus, which would be the first of its kind in Kyrene. And as most of you, I'm assuming, are well aware that anytime a system-wide change is attempted in public education, there are hurdles to cross, minds that need to be expanded, traditions have to be forfeited, and hearts have to be changed. If it was an easy thing to do, we would be seeing current educational practices keeping up with modern times in a much more rapid fashion than we do. Our team knows that what is right for teaching and learning isn't always easy, and what is easy in teaching and learning isn't always the right thing to do. We may not have it all figured out yet in Spark, but we're excited about the journey we're on. So thank you for choosing to spend some time with us this morning and learn more about what we're doing here in Tempe, Arizona, in Kyrene School District and at Kyrene de las Manitas. And we welcome any questions you have about our process, our program, and the people who have made it happen. Thank you.
All right, we will open it up for a question and answer. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask the team at Spark at Manitas, please go ahead and type them in the chat box. And while we're waiting for some questions, I will jump in with a question for the team. And I'm curious, what are you learning about yourselves as you've gone through this implementation over the past year or two? What are your takeaways at this point in the process?
I think we would all have really different answers. A couple of things for me. I just compare, what I'm doing right now and the engagement of my students versus when I was in a more traditional setting with mandated curriculum and things like that. And just the engagement and the ownership students take of their learning is honestly just out of this world. It's just amazing. When I receive an email from a child who wants me to go into his work to give him feedback and he's doing that on his own, it's just something I didn't experience in the traditional classroom. And then personally, I have found that I knew I wanted to go into leadership, but I have found that it would be really difficult for me to do a leadership job where I am not still working with students daily. And so this has really provided a perfect role for me. Other people can weigh in too.
I can share. So during my whole undergraduate experience, when I told people I wanted to be a teacher, a lot of people, and especially teachers, would tell me my first few years would be survival mode. And, don't get discouraged. It'll be fine. You'll make it. And I was kind of scared, that seems very intimidating, the idea of being in survival mode for so many years. And, looking at the statistics of teachers that leave, education and within 5 years was intimidating. But through having the opportunity to student teach and now teach in this program, I haven't felt that way ever. I've never felt like I was in survival mode, even when teaching hybrid in a pandemic, because I have a team that's supporting me. And also having the opportunity to student teach and learn how to do this work, I feel like really, really changed my confidence in my own ability as a new teacher.
Okay, I'll jump to some of the questions that have popped up in the chat box. Tell us, how do you guys plan for the week? What does that look like?
Okay, I'll jump in. So we use the backward planning model. So we first spend a long planning session before the quarter starts, really everybody being familiar with what the end goal is for students. And then we start kind of breaking that down. Like benchmarks, we want kids to reach these benchmarks to make sure that they get to that end goal. And then within that time, we're also talking about how does everybody's piece contribute to that? So how is the ELA teacher supporting that and supporting students? How is the social studies and science teacher supporting that? So it really starts with the long-term goals, and then we break it down week by week to make sure we're meeting those benchmarks. Our team meets all the time. I mean, we meet before school, after school, and mostly just because we share space. So we're right there with each other, and adults naturally want to talk to each other. And so we do a lot of that when we don't have students in the room. So that's sort of the planning process for us.
And then Aisha is curious about, what does the coaching look like for each of the different roles on the team?
Well, each of the individuals on our team are really different, and their needs in terms of support are really different. And so It can look like modeling lessons for them when they need that, when they need to see more instructional practices actually with students. It can look like sitting side by side and looking at standards to make sure that we're really understanding them. Everything that coaching can be, conversations, it can be about, teaching, and it can also be about relationship building and all the different pieces. But in my role is to support them wherever they're at. And so my coaching really looks different with every individual on my team.
And then Dr. Collins, do you then provide coaching to Mary? Is that kind of a layered effect?
I hope so. This year is, working in the pandemic has just been so different. I am really lucky though, that Mary is my half-time assistant principal. So when we do work together, I hope that I'm coaching her and helping her in that capacity. But I'm learning just as much from Mary. Honestly, she's coaching me just as much as I hope to be coaching her, which I think is how coaching often works. But that is an interesting piece of the model. If you saw on the slide about the staffing, it had a 1.5 TED, and that's because she's a half-time TED and a half-time assistant principal to me this school year.
Great. We have a question about, do each of you have a desk in the room? And I'm going to kind of expand on that question to even ask you guys, what went into the planning of the learning environment? Because it's very unique from a traditional classroom. So maybe you could expand a little bit more on how the environment came to be, because you have multiple rooms and they're each designed differently.
Yeah, I'll start, and then Zoe, feel free to chime in. I want to start by saying that what this looked like in August when we opened our doors to what it looked like before students had to leave us because of the pandemic was very, very different. So in the beginning of the year, we had to train students. So I'm talking a little bit more about students and what the room looked like, but I will address the desk because that's actually such a great question. It looked a little more traditional at the beginning of the year because we had to train students on how to use space. Like, they don't know how to use space at all. And so that was we were folding in, giving them a little bit more freedom and helping them understand, like, if you're selecting a space to sit, are you selecting a space that's going to help you do better in class, or, and helping guide those decisions. Ultimately, the space is pretty flexible. We want to have a perfect spot for every child, which looks different from the child next to them. In terms of a desk, no, we do not have desks. It would be a waste of space. We find ourselves, in a normal year, we're at a table with students, and then we're moving to the floor with other students, and then we're moving next to a desk. It wouldn't serve us well. Our middle section of our design is that maker space. So when we're planning as a team, we often are inside of there. It kind of feels like a little bit of a Starbucks. We're in there, we're collaborating. We've got these large tables, but a desk is just not necessary because we are all over the place. The other thing is that traditionally as well, students are moving to different spaces, not necessarily teachers. So that's just something to know.
Yeah, and I would say too that a couple people have asked, like, regarding all of our stuff when we're moving all the time, and we all got these little 3-tier carts. We just wheel our cart around, laptop on top, maybe your, standards book in there. And so we have those things, but they are not in one space because we're always moving.
Can I just really quickly say sorry? And I was just going to share that we're very purposeful about not calling it the Spark Classroom. It's the Spark Learning Space, the Spark Learning Studio, because since we're trying to reimagine how teaching and learning looks, we're trying not to use traditional words that associate it with like classroom. Everyone has their picture of what that looks like. So sometimes we slip, but we're trying to be really purposeful in that language, just because it's a unique and different experience and model. We want to treat it as such.
I think that's really interesting how you mentioned you actually had to train the students how to use the space, which, makes perfect sense, but until you're in the middle of the model, might not have thought of that going into it. So That's really interesting. Aisha is interested in, given that you are using project-based learning, what curriculum do you use, and what impact does the curriculum have on the success of your team?
I love this question. This is one of the best parts of my job. We were given space and freedom to design curriculum. So in a past role of mine, I was a consultant and really exposed to a lot of curriculum, different things. So I did come to the table with a familiarity of different things that are available to teachers. What I will tell you is that we start by, we backward planned 3 years of science and social studies standards. Every quarter is really rooted in science and social studies because you can pull every other subject into that. And once we knew what was the overarching idea, what was the overarching goal for our students, then we went out to see what is out there that best supports our goal. There are some, there's just some really great, I would say the curriculum, so we really do design a lot, but I will say one curriculum that is great to start with, we don't use it, we really don't use it, but we use a lot of the ideas of it, is EL, so expeditionary learning. It has great protocols in it to get students talking to each other and things like that. I wouldn't say that it's really the project-based piece that we use, but we're pulling in the best aspects of all the things that are available. There's so many great resources. I don't think any of them is perfect, and especially because we're trying to be responsive to the kids who are in front of us and design things for them. One other resource I want to talk about that we do love is Newsella, and the reason why we love that is because we can have 30 kids with 5 different levels in our classroom, all accessing learning, same topic, they're reading pretty similar articles, but at a level that they can access, having common conversations. It is a wonderful resource for us that we feel like really helps to support this culture of bringing everybody, welcoming everybody into the conversation. I think in terms of the second part of that question, what impact does the curriculum have on the success of your team? I want to say the freedom is what has allowed us to be successful. The freedom to be able to choose these things that best fit our purpose has really allowed us to be successful.
As I'm waiting for other questions from the group, I'll ask you guys another question, and perhaps you can expand upon what structures are in place to ensure marginalized voices are heard. How does this model support students with different disabilities, different language abilities? How are you managing that?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Can we take it, Mary? It's just, okay. You can speak to it, obviously, from the implementation, but I was just going to share that think about if in a regular school, the resource teacher and team having their own classroom for students with IEPs, and possibly the teacher that the English language learners pulling them out of the classroom. This year it looks a lot different because everything's online. Our students are online. Those students that are in person who have special services are being able to be pulled by them in person, but majority's online. We want to reimagine what that even looks like. So our hope, and we actually have a planning team meeting next week about this for next school year, is that our resource teachers, our special education educators, start collaborating with the general education teachers to provide supports in the Spark space as much as possible next year. Right now, you think about how a student is pulled out, maybe during reading for their IEP reading goals, and the content is completely disconnected from what's going on in the classroom. Now, obviously, they need a modified curriculum, and they need specialized curriculum for whatever their IEP states. But the idea that we can collaborate so that there's more connection and that students can stay in their gen ed classroom as much as possible with supports from the specialists who come in to them without the kids going out. So that's the ultimate hope for students that receive services, no matter what service that is. That could be students in our classroom who receive special education services, gifted services, English language learners, students who receive OT, physical therapy, speech therapy. No, just like any other teaching environment, you have small groups you need to pull for, and it's no different in the Spark model. So if students have speech services, they need to go to a specialized spot to do that. We're not saying nobody can leave the space, but we want to see it to be much more collaborative with all the educators. And the other thing I was going to mention this, I mentioned this in the last session, we have 3 self-contained programs on our campus for students that are at that level of support where they are in a self-contained classroom. We would like to see these learners being included and have a more inclusion. Thank you. I was slipping my mind. An inclusive inclusion model, where as much of the time as possible that is they're able to, they can come into the Spark space, just like you would when you have students that have inclusion into the gen ed classroom. But we are also imagining that, looking at the students on our campus and their needs that are in self-contained, this is actually going to be a model. Spark is a model that we think they could be included even more than a gen ed classroom because of the way Spark is set up. So we're really excited about that. And we have a long time self-contained teacher on our campus who has already met with Mary and the team and who thinks that some of this is going to be phenomenal for her current students.
And I just want to piggyback. I know, Anne, this was not exactly your question, but putting in a plug, I don't, receive any payoff by this, but putting in a plug for project-based learning, it is so great because we are always looking at, are we representing everyone who is in our room? And my team has done ongoing, it will always be ongoing, deep work in equity and inclusion. And we are seeking out feedback from the kids who are in front of us. Are they feeling represented in the curriculum? But the space that project-based learning allows for you to pull in the resources to help every child feel like they can see themselves in it is great. So that's just to piggyback to make sure we are bringing them all in.
I'm not seeing any more questions pop up, but I'll throw one more at you guys. I'm curious, you brought up the pandemic and certainly the shift to remote instruction. Did this model, were there challenges with the team coordinating during the pandemic? Maybe Zoe, you as a first-year teacher, maybe you could share a little bit about, this is your first year of teaching and certainly official teaching, doesn't look like a normal year. How did this model support, or were there challenges you had to overcome as we shifted to kind of unprecedented circumstances?
Yeah, I would say, obviously we weren't expecting it. And with, the rest of the cohort at ASU Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, all those student teachers actually got removed from their classroom. So they started working on a different student teaching experience project. But since the 3 of the Spark teachers, we were signed as a contracted to work in Spark, we actually got to stay working in our classroom during the pandemic. And so obviously it was virtual, it was different, but we were able to still continue to work with the students that we had learned how to, teach them throughout the year and with our team. And so that was really beneficial to me. And kind of going into this year, we started the year online, and I feel like because we had kind of ended the year online, we were in a good place with that. We did a lot of work over the summer to make sure we had those technology skills, and being fresh out of college, I had a lot of those technology skills from my classes. I took technology courses. I feel like I was at an advantage, and a lot of the younger teachers are at an advantage with that in the sense. But what was the biggest challenge, I would say, was teaching hybrid. But we wanted to make sure that all of our students could stay in Spark, whether they didn't feel comfortable coming in person when our school opened in person, or whether they did. So as a team, we decided that we would teach both our online and in-person students. And that took a couple weeks for us to get in the groove of. That was the biggest hurdle. But after 2 full weeks of it, we felt really confident in it. And if, we ever do go back to that model in person, I think that we will be prepared for that.
Anyone else on the team have anything else to add?
I would just say that I came into this program this school year, but hearing stories about how they seamlessly transitioned last spring And then even because they didn't have their students to say goodbye to, even though most of them came up with them the fall this year, they did things over the summer with them. They had movie nights, virtual Zoom movie nights. So they really kept those connections.
That's really incredible, because for a lot of our children, they've really missed those connections. So that's great. And I think that's also another probably benefit to this model, is that we didn't have to reintroduce students to a new teacher. They knew the team for the most part. So that probably helped a lot. Aisha also is curious, what's the greatest challenge outside the pandemic in implementing this model?
Yeah, I think the greatest challenge is that we have systems in education that are really hard, that aren't open to change. So getting those systems, getting people on board to support change, it's not so much the people, it's the systems that they think we need to always, abide by. So let me just give you some examples of that. The way that I ask my teachers to teach, the way that they teach, and the way that the kids need us to teach doesn't always line up exactly to what the teacher evaluation tool looks like. So we need something that's going to provide my teachers with support and guidance in growing their skills that are in line with what they're doing. Another thing would just be like a synergy system where we have house kids. We have all of our kids on one roster, but I need all my teachers to be able to access all information about all kids. I will say our district has been so supportive in thinking, in being innovative to support us, reaching out to companies if it's a company that needs to, support the change that we're trying to make. It's just sometimes takes a little bit, but we're really happy to hopefully get those kinks worked out in the first couple of years, and then create a little bit smoother path for people who are going to on board with us.
All right. Well, I would like to thank the Kyrene de las Manitas Spark School for their presentation and all the wisdom you've shared with us. It's incredibly beneficial for all of us to learn from you, and we applaud your efforts for being the lead learners in this initiative and in your district. At this time, you are free to leave the line, and we thank you for your participation.